Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Police investigate after data was stolen from a rape crisis center.
It's hard to recall data once it's in bad hands.
The fear sensitive information may have been stolen. Plus, a faster way of getting around Surrey and Delta.
Fast service hoping for, because the 319 is super slow. So hoping for way faster service.
TransLink unveils a new express bus along one of the region's busiest routes, and the rush to save lives in Japan. As a series of powerful earthquakes destroys tens of thousands of homes.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Dan is away tonight. Cybersecurity experts are warning of serious privacy concerns after sensitive data was stolen from a Vancouver rape crisis center. Police confirmed to CBC News they're investigating the incident at the Salal Sexual Violence Support Center. Yasmin Ghania has more on what we know.
Emails obtained by CBC News show on December 3rd, a backup server was stolen, among other items, from Salal's under-construction office. The server contained information of previous and current clients, as well as donors. It is possible that your name, email address, telephone numbers, and notes about safety risks or what services you have requested could be released, sold, and shared publicly, reads the email to clients. The stolen server also contained donor bank account details, including names, addresses, phone numbers, and photos of checks. Salal told clients and donors that the risk of data being stolen or misused is low because accessing the data requires sophisticated IT knowledge. But cybersecurity experts say the center seems to be downplaying the threat.
Most of the time, these people are connected, very well connected to different cybercrime groups, or if that is not the case, they can go to the darknet and dark web and easily connect to the forums that are used for buying and selling data.
Experts say the data could be used to drain bank accounts, commit fraud, or conduct phishing scams.
It's hard to recall data once it's in sort of bad hands.
He says the incident at Salal should be a wake-up call for organizations working with vulnerable people to be proactive about data security. One woman who says she sought counseling services at Salal tells CBC News she's filing a complaint with BC's privacy watchdog over the breach. Dalia Israel, Salal's executive director, declined an interview request from CBC News. In a statement, she says Salal is doing everything possible to protect its data from future thefts and does not believe this break-in was targeted at the center or survivors. Yasmin Ghania, CBC News, Vancouver.
A Vancouver lawyer accused of filing a groundless pseudo-legal lawsuit against her neighbor over a glass deck divider has been banned from practicing law in BC, while the province's Law Society investigates a complaint. It happened when lawyer Naomi Arbabi filed a lawsuit accusing her neighbor Colleen McClelland of trespassing by installing a private divider on her rooftop condo deck. She said her claim was based on the law of the land and not on legal codes, acts, or statutes. She asked for compensation of $1,000 a day for every day the glass divider was in place. McClelland went to the BC Supreme Court to have the lawsuit thrown out, arguing the lawsuit is an example of an organized pseudo-logical commercial argument, which is a debunked and unsuccessful class of legal theory. A decision has not yet been released. TransLink has launched a new rapid bus service between Surrey and Delta. The route is part of a long-term plan to bolster public transit options in Metro Vancouver. As John Hernandez reports, TransLink says the route will increase passenger capacity by 20% on the busiest bus corridor south of the Fraser.
There's a new bus in town, and these riders are hoping it will shave valuable time off their commute.
Fast service hoping for.
Melissa Grubb is about to hop on the R6 for the first time, a new rapid alternative to the 319, which runs between Scott Road Station to the Newton Exchange in Delta.
The 319 is super slow. Well, I usually take it during rush hour, so it takes you half an hour just to get up the hill there. That's like 4 stops maybe. So I'm hoping that'll get nixed by this one.
TransLink unveiled the new bus on Tuesday, which has fewer stops, all-door boarding, and even Wi-Fi.
This express service will make room for 20% more people and make commutes faster by up to 10 minutes in each direction.
The Scott Road route is one of the busiest in the region, with up to 30,000 riders a day. Many say they're already noticing a difference.
Time is money, so that's why how much we time save, it will be help us to do more work and also get help to relax at home.
They come to on time without wasting any time. So I think these buses are good, especially for the international students.
Ridership across Surrey has surged, currently at 120% of pre-pandemic levels. Advocates say the R6 is a step in the right direction, but more investments are needed to keep up with the city's rapid pace of growth.
We know that immigration is going to continue to come to the city of Surrey, and we know that everyone going into single passenger vehicles is not going to help, one, our environment, and two, congestion as is quite a problem here.
Surrey is expected to be home to the region's first bus rapid transit, or BRT, route. The mayor hopes it will be in service within the year.
The growth in our community has been extraordinary over the past decade, but certainly now transit is what is needed absolutely the most.
A long-term plan to speed up daily commutes, as this region's growth shows no signs of slowing down. John Hernandez, CBC News, Surrey.
A BC trucking company that was suspended after an overpass crash in Delta last month can still operate its Alberta trucks in this province. Chohan Freight Forwarders' BC fleet of 65 commercial vehicles were grounded after its truck caused significant damage. But the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure says Chohan operates in Alberta as a separate entity, and its fleet of Alberta-registered vehicles are regulated by that jurisdiction, adding that generally speaking, carriers from one province may operate in other jurisdictions, provided they carry the appropriate insurance. BC Assessment has released its annual list of property values across the province. Justin McElroy goes through what's up, what's down, and just how much the most expensive property in the province is valued at.
The 2024 property values are out for every single home in British Columbia. Here are 5 things you need to know. First, property values didn't change that much for most people in this province. Here is a chart. In the biggest cities, they stayed pretty stable, especially when you consider the big gains during the previous 2 years, when interest rates were low and selling prices surged. Second, the places where values surged most by percentage were actually in some of BC's smallest communities. Zabalos, Temblor Ridge, Haida Gwaii. These are places that are hard to get to and often have boom or bust cycles. But last year at least, some very small communities had a bit of a boom. Third, life continues to be good if you're Chip Wilson. The Lululemon founder continued to have the most expensive property in the province, with his Point Grey Road waterfront mansion now valued at $82 million. And he's in good company, or at least rich company, because 18 other homes on Point Grey Road made the list of the 100 most valuable homes in the province. In fact, more than 3/4 of the top 100 list were in 5 very specific areas in Metro Vancouver, from West Vancouver to Shaughnessy. And finally, you might think your yearly property assessments have an impact on your property taxes, but they really don't. In reality, how much your taxes go up or down depends on whether your city council passed a budget with higher taxes, and whether the value of your home went up or down compared to all your neighbors. Which means that for most people in this province this year, property value notices are more a case of bragging rights. Or, if you're concerned about affordability, perhaps lamentation. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The unusually warm start to winter has meant not much snow at ski hills across this province, taking some of the charm off the holiday season for the local skiing community. CBC's Early Edition host Stephen Quinn spoke with a climate expert to understand what's causing this shift in the weather pattern.
In the Pacific Ocean, there are 2 sort of climatic oscillations that occur. One that is well known, the La Nina El Nino cycle. And then there's a larger cycle that can last for up to decades called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. And it has a warm phase and a cold phase. We're in the cold phase, luckily. If we move into the warm phase with an El Nino, things could be worse. And that's possibly what could happen for next winter.
Pidwirny says January is expected to remain cold before warmer weather returns for February and March.
I think for a lot of us who are in the winter sport, we're recognizing that climate change is happening, but also recognizing that, you know, it's nature, it's what Mother Nature is doing, and we have no control over. So all we can do just honestly just wait and hope that, you know, that the snow comes back and we can be able to do something on the mountain, because right now a lot of our programs on standstill.
Kesiama says the lack of snow has forced her group to push their programs further back into the winter. Meteorologist Russ LeCate joins us now for the first look at the weather. Noticeably warm holiday for a lot of people, but today the rain was back.
It's back, and we don't have the double-digit temperatures anymore, thank goodness, Michelle. And we are trending a little cooler in the lower mainland and significantly colder at higher elevations. We'll talk about that a little bit. I've been back in the lab sort of putting some graphics together to talk about the mountaintop snow that's on the way. We'll certainly touch upon that later in the show. I bring this sort of North American graphic up here to give you an idea of the purples and the pinks. That's really our true Arctic air, and you've got to go to the northernmost reaches of the Northwest Territories and Quebec and into the far-flung parts of Nunavut to find any of that Arctic air. There is really none of it across the Canadian provinces. Incredibly mild south of the border for the early part of winter as well. We're going to see some changes developing now. I just sort of brought up a bit of a lower resolution computer forecast model here. We're going to run it through the next several days, give you an idea that Arctic air begins to descend, and it's across the entire country, getting pretty close to the coastline here by the weekend. Now, it does not reach Metro Vancouver. In fact, by Sunday morning, I suspect if you look at our color code here, we're somewhere around -1, -2, give or take, region-wide. It's definitely cooling off. For tonight, Michelle, a little more rain on the way. Same old, same old. Our forecast highs today, I think we're at 7, 8 degrees, a couple of 9s out there as well. The overnight low is going to be 4 degrees. Lots of leftover cloud for tomorrow, and I think we'll sort of hang in there and wait for more rain in that long-range picture.
Okay, we will check in with you a little later in the show.
For sure.
Investigators in Japan are trying to determine how 2 planes at one of Tokyo's biggest airports ended up on a deadly collision course on the runway. Lindsay Duncombe shows us the chaotic moments from inside that passenger plane and why quick thinking likely saved lives.
At first, panic. 379 passengers and crew jolted when their Japan Airlines jet collided with the smaller plane on the tarmac as it landed. Flames fed by wind and jet fuel ravaged the aircraft.
We heard that big bang, and I turned and I saw that flame that was making a trace, and then we saw the plane that was inflamed.
Panic, though, gave way to action. Everyone on board escaped within minutes.
And this crew is amazing that they got everybody out of there so quickly by just channeling them through the aisles. They were conscious, they were ready for any kind of accident.
I can only say it was a miracle, says this passenger. We could have died. 5 people on board the smaller plane were killed. Members of the Coast Guard on their way to deliver aid to earthquake victims. The only survivor, the pilot, was injured. The busy airport was closed for hours after the crash.
I was shocked. I mean, these kinds of accidents aren't supposed to occur, especially in a place like Haneda.
Tragedies compounding as the scope of the damage from Monday's earthquake becomes increasingly clear. Roads to the hardest hit area, a city of 27,000, cut off. Crews work to find and rescue people who may be trapped. This earthquake is Japan's strongest since 2011, when a tsunami triggered a nuclear meltdown. This time, the power plants are secure. Some comfort, at least for those out of their homes, bracing for what could come next. People at this shelter aren't sleeping, though. It's because people have trauma, the operator explains. Even if it shakes a little, they become very anxious. Aftershocks are expected and could last for weeks, even months, prompting fear of yet more tragedy for people already dealing with so much loss. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meanwhile, aid and rescue efforts are continuing as casualty numbers continue to climb. At least 55 people are reported to have died and 17 suffered serious injuries. Property damage is widespread with tens of thousands of buildings destroyed. People in some areas are being told to stay away from their homes because of the ongoing danger. Roads, power, water, and communications remain out in many areas. After the break, why some fitness industry experts are calling for a tax credit to offset the cost of a gym membership and who those cuts could benefit. Stay with us. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. A Toronto startup is developing new technology that it says will make train travel as fast as plane travel in the next decade. As Alicia Son tells us, the company, Transpod, is hoping its innovation will reshape transportation in Canada.
Transpod is an ultra-high-speed transportation system being developed in Canada to carry passengers between cities at over 1,000 kilometers per hour.
In a city where transit projects miss deadlines and hemorrhage money amid low ridership and inconsistent service, it's hard to imagine such a high-tech, high-speed commuter future.
We're magnetically levitating it, and we have special engines and special power systems. It's fully electrically powered, but we have this crazy technology using plasma to get power to the vehicle.
To understand how it works, let's go to a model of one of the arm mechanisms that will line the outside of the vehicle.
Imagine my arm is the power rail, like on a subway or a streetcar or a high-speed train, but this thing does not want to touch it. It wants to stay exactly at the right distance there, even when the vehicle is going up and down a little bit or side to side. And so with the special technology that we have, you don't see it here, we create that plasma with very high voltages.
That glowy stuff, that's the plasma. To dumb it all the way down, essentially it's achieved
with some very fancy control systems and physics.
The vehicle looks like a plane without wings and would travel along an elevated structure.
The Transpod line is pretty similar, most of it, to the Vancouver SkyTrain.
Downtown stations will be serviced at reasonable speeds. It will kick into high gear to get out of town, to the airport and beyond.
Quebec, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and then Detroit and Chicago. That would be the ultimate goal.
The amount of time it would take between cities on a Transpod train would be about the equivalent to how long it takes to fly from one to the other. Transpod also aims to be privately funded.
Because we can mix both freight and passengers.
And even though it's a homegrown innovation from the brilliant minds working out of a West End Toronto warehouse, it's the government of Alberta who signed on to build the first test track between Calgary and Edmonton.
And what does that say?
It's interesting when it comes to be open for business, and the culture, the entrepreneurial spirit is stronger in those regions.
But as long as Transpod has some wins on the test track, this could be the next big Canadian tech triumph.
We have some of the top physicists, engineers in all of these different fields, from aerospace sector, from the railway world, from construction, and we're really combining all of those key experts in the talent pool to make this a reality. We're trying to be that hive of innovation.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. For many undergraduate university students, January marks the start to their last semester before graduating, and it can be a scary time full of questions about employment, loans, and stepping into a new era of life. One of the most pressing questions, money. Joining us now is Sandra Joe, a certified financial planner turned financial coach. Sandra, to start off, what should university students in their last semester be really thinking about in terms of their finances?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So one of the most important things that we really want to look at when you're coming out of university is that first employment. And it's highly, highly important that you align yourself with a business and a company that has values that are in line with what you are interested in. So not just taking the first job, not just taking the first salary offering, and really doing your due diligence about looking around, shopping around, and seeing what kind of roles are out there. It's important to note that as you are looking for this job, it's not going to be your forever home. So it doesn't matter if it's not your dream role. What you really want to focus on is getting that experience and making sure that it is in an industry and in a field that you really want to work in.
And many students will be coming out of school with loans to pay off. How should people think about balancing saving for the future versus paying off those loans?
Yeah, that's a great question. So whenever it comes to looking at loans, usually a student loan has a grace period after you graduate of about 6 months. That allows you the time to go out, look for employment. But while you're looking for employment, it's also very highly recommended that you have a job, maybe in an industry that you're not as passionate about, but it's something that's going to pay the bills, like hospitality or retail, so that you're saving up money and putting it aside into an emergency cash savings account, so that when you do eventually have to start paying these student loans back, you do already have a savings buffer that you can draw on as you need to, because you may not get the salary that you're looking for right off the bat.
And we're coming out of the holidays, big spending season for a lot of people. The cost of living is hitting everyone, not just those younger people starting out. So why is it important to learn about managing your money when you're younger?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I really emphasize, is that a lot of people think that they need to have money in order to learn about money. And that's totally not the case, because the earlier that you learn about it, the more compounding effect it can have over your future. So making little and small sacrifices when you're in your early 20s will have an exponential effect on how you evolve as an adult and your understanding of money as you progress and go through the different stages of life. If you're waiting until your 30s and 40s, you're losing out on that snowball compounding effect that just making, $50 a week or $100 a month into a savings, building that habit and that savings muscle, so you're always planning for the future, really is setting yourself up for financial security, which is one of the most important things that I teach as a financial coach, because it's not about if something happens to us, it's about when something happens to us, whether it be the pandemic, losing our job, a family emergency, a health scare. All of these different kinds of things will happen at some point throughout our life, and being financially prepared for when they happen is going to alleviate that stress and pain, and also facilitate you to be able to live the life of your dreams, because you have the flexibility and the financial foundation to do so.
Financial coach Sandra Jo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And some fitness industry experts say the healthcare system suffers when Canadians are out of shape. Now they're calling for a national tax credit to offset the cost of a gym membership. But as Renee Filipponi explains, it may not help those who need it the most.
Awesome job! At Orange Theory Fitness in Edmonton, it's all about motivation. Get those feet moving! The fitness industry, hit hard by the pandemic, is still recovering, and now inflation is weighing on it too.
But at the end of the day, it's costing them dollars, and if they, if they're thinking that they don't have the dollars to put food on their table, it's one of the things that does unfortunately have to go. And so it's the number one reason that we have people quitting today.
Yeah. The fitness industry is calling on the federal government to include gym memberships as a medical expense on their taxes to make it more affordable.
Any incentive is an incentive to get people started.
They also point to research that working out improves health and can reduce the strain on the healthcare system.
We are in a healthcare crisis, and there's a 2023 report published in the Canadian Journal of Public Health that actually states that in Canada, due to sedentary behavior, we are losing $2.2 billion.
A tax credit is already offered in Newfoundland for things like swimming lessons and gym memberships, valued at $348 per family. Ottawa says it's committed to helping Canadians become more active, but when asked about a tax rebate, it pointed instead to its $10 million investment in programs like Participaction to increase daily physical activity.
On some level, does this line the pockets of big corporations?
This SFU researcher says a tax credit won't necessarily help low-income Canadians who often struggle to find time for the gym or can't pay the costs up front.
If we think about, beyond the scope of, let's say, low-income Canadians, we're also thinking about, well, how do we ensure that the people that are going to the gym are actually getting the long-term benefits of this? How do we track that?
For these gym regulars struggling with the soaring cost of living, any break is welcome.
This is going to be so much less money for the fitness I spend, and so much more money I can put into groceries and household spending.
Work for that distance. Helping to pick up the fitness pace this year. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
A new report finds Canada's top CEOs are raking in more money than ever. So what can be done about it? Coming up, we will tell you about some of the recommendations.
On our TikTok, actually garnered 6.5 million views. So we're talking about worldwide viral. This was when a prominent hip hop artist in Canada, Drake, was scheduled to come to Vancouver. And for his first of 2 concerts, he canceled 2 hours before the show started.
That he did.
And understandably, Vancouverites were quite upset. Let's take a listen.
Okay. I'm very sad. Been here since 6:30 in the morning. So, yeah. I'm upset.
I planned this months in advance. My car, my B&B, everything was months in advance. I saved a lot of money, and we got here, and we were so happy about it. And just 2 hours before it's supposed to happen, they give us an excuse that the stage wasn't finished.
So the comments are filled with Drake song lyric puns.
Yes.
Obviously, I'm upset being the biggest
the number
one. And one of the top comments also was that Taylor Swift would never.
Well, Taylor would never, but okay, now that you've mentioned Taylor Swift, I have a feeling that I know what the next viral moment is going to be.
Yeah.
Ms. Swift, it's David Eby, Premier of British Columbia. I'm not accustomed to begging, but for my own constituency of my loving and beautiful wife and my son, Ezra, please come to Vancouver, British Columbia. We'll treat you well.
Well, and then thanks to Evie, or maybe not thanks to Evie, Taylor did announce a concert here in Vancouver, and that started the race to find tickets.
Oh, and that was huge. It's Taylor's taken over. What's another pick for top viral Vancouver moment?
This user went out of his way to create a little art project for himself and took some pictures. He made a miniature version of the blue fence, a miniature version of that redevelopment application around those little gnome houses.
Goodness.
Obviously, this blew up. People loved it. And my favorite touch of the whole thing is that he even put a little piece of graffiti on the redevelopment application, just like they do in real life.
major development in the Israeli-Hamas war, this time in Lebanon. Hamas is reporting one of its top officials has been killed in Beirut by a reported Israeli strike. Saleh al-Aruri was a founder of the group's military wing. As Sasha Petrusik reports, his death is heightening the risk of the conflict widening across the Middle East.
Deep inside Lebanon, the airstrike ripped into the Dahia refugee camp in South Beirut. It's a stronghold of the militant group Hezbollah, an ally of Hamas. And Hamas blames Israel for what it calls a cowardly assassination. Among those killed was top Hamas leader Saleh al-Aruri, a founder of the group's military wing, known for financing and organizing attacks on Israel. Israel would not take responsibility for the airstrike, but it did assert the right to go after Hamas officials anywhere.
Anyone who kills Israelis can expect the Israeli state and the Israeli armed forces to ultimately reach them.
The reaction was immediate. Palestinian protests in the occupied West Bank, accusations from Lebanon that Israel was trying to drag it into the Gaza conflict. Fighting between Israel and Hezbollah has been intensifying along the Lebanese border. And today, the UN warned that shockwaves from this Beirut explosion could spread.
The developments are extremely worrying. And I think this just really highlights what the Secretary General had just said about the dangers of the spillover of this conflict in the wider region.
The conflict continued in Gaza itself. Though Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said fighting in the north could calm soon. Some troops may be withdrawn, and evacuated Israeli communities along the border may be able to return home. As the new year and the fourth month of this conflict starts, those who are not going home are hundreds of thousands of Gaza refugees, enduring more shortages and showers in the cold. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
A report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says Canada's 100 top-paid CEOs have already earned what the average worker makes all year. As Philippe de Montigny explains, a wealth tax is one of the solutions being proposed to address the pay disparity.
Canada's top CEOs made more than ever before in 2022, a year of sky-high inflation.
CEOs are paid primarily through bonuses, and those bonuses are based on things like revenue and profits. And they are being remunerated as if every dollar of these inflation-driven profits are their doing.
A new report from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives found that the 100 highest paid CEOs raked in nearly $15 million on average that year, about 246 times what the average worker made.
It's absolutely enraging.
Canada's largest private sector union says this growing pay gap and the rising cost of living has been pushing workers to demand higher wages.
You have seen workers rising up against that. This is why we're having more disputes in Canada. It is why there is more conflict at collective bargaining tables, because workers have said enough is enough.
The higher the risk, the higher the compensation.
Asni Zawali is the CEO of Connected Labs, a tech startup in Toronto that designs virtual campuses for universities and large organizations. He says top executives shoulder a lot of risk.
Their role is to ensure the financial and operational viability of the company. If they do that, they get compensated accordingly. If they don't do that, they get fired.
But his company has a policy to limit the wage gap.
The highest salary is never 10 times higher than the lowest salary. There's no cap on the highest salary, as long as you move the lowest salary up as well.
To address the pay gap, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives suggests introducing a wealth tax and adding new income brackets at the top that would be taxed more heavily. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
You might have received some shiny new gifts this holiday season, but you wouldn't be alone if you're worried about how long they'll last. As Aaron Collins explains, many items are no longer built to last, but he takes a closer look at the growing movement to repair rather than replace.
It's called a repair exchange. Busted stuff from snowblowers to baking gear.
I bought my KitchenAid mixer, stand mixer, to get fixed.
What was wrong with it?
It wouldn't turn on.
That's no good.
No, it would. I tried to fix it myself, and I didn't.
Paired with expert hands, fixing them up for free.
Too much goes into a landfill. I mean, the landfill over here is full, and it's filling up pretty fast. You know, the more we can keep out of there, the better, right? That's what I think.
More people are looking to repair instead of replace things these days, a trend that's been noticed in Ottawa, too. This bill passed in October allows people to skirt barriers to repairs put in place by manufacturers. The federal government has hinted that more help could be on the way for Canadians looking to fix things.
I think that the winds are blowing in the repair direction. If we look at Europe, if we look at the United States, clearly this is the way we are headed.
A push for people's right to repair their stuff.
Is a public interest movement that's calling for greater access to parts, tools, information, and software that's necessary to fix all the things that surround us today.
Well, it's a movement being embraced at repair shops across Canada, too.
If you can fix it and it works and I'm saving the environment another phone, that makes me really happy.
The biggest barrier to making repairs more common, the price of parts.
What makes this problematic to fix?
Even though it's an incredibly easy repair done within 10 minutes, the raw cost of this screen simply makes it non-economical.
But some skepticism here that new laws will change things.
We've been burned in the past. The legislation ends up not having the teeth it requires in order to actually make a change.
Still, back at that repair exchange, a win.
Just hoping and praying that it would work out, and it did. I'm so happy.
Some hope, too, for a more sustainable future. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
A stunning upset and a heartbreaking loss for Canada at the World Junior Hockey Championship in Sweden. Canada fought back from an early deficit in their quarterfinal game against the Czech Republic, but in a tie game with just seconds left in the third period, the Czechs got the upper hand.
Fremont works in, drops it back to Beher. And now Stensel shot scored! Stensel with a shot that deflected by Rousseau. And with 11 seconds to go in the third, the Czechs have retaken the lead.
The Czech Republic hung on for a 3-2 win. It's the first time they've ever beaten Canada in the medal round at the World Junior Tournament. Canada is eliminated and has no chance to win a medal. The world's most popular marble has been extracted from the Tuscan hills for more than 2 millennia, used for everything from ancient palazzo facades and sculpting Renaissance masterpieces. But as Megan Williams explains, behind the creamy white stone is a darker story and a local struggle.
The Apuan Alps of Tuscany, with what looks like snow, but is actually the world's largest marble mining district, Carrara. In ancient Rome, enslaved people toiled, cutting and hauling the stone used for imperial monuments and statues. Marble prized in the Renaissance by Michelangelo, who, from a massive block, sculpted his masterpiece, David. To this day, artists are still drawn to Carrara, where the marble is extracted from quarries like this one, owned by Franco Barattini, who began working here at 12, sleeping in a shack perched above the quarry. He's now the owner, exporting marble to the Vatican and Princess of Thailand, billionaires in China and Saudi Arabia, and producing the byproduct, calcium carbonate, ground from this debris into a whitening agent used for cleaning products, paint, even toothpaste, creating a dust that floats up into the Apuan Alps above.
From this dust, we have a kind of pollution we call marmettola, that is not just the dust, but we have oil inside and part of metals inside.
Nature guide Matteo Palazzi says the dust is choking rare cave species, and polluting the aquifer in this UNESCO Global Geopark, designated for its geological heritage. Local activist Eros Teti has mobilized to limit extraction of the 80 or so quarries inside the park.
The really precious marble of the Apuan Alps is little nowadays. That's why they base their economy mainly on the carbonate calcium. It's the only way they have to keep open many quarries.
He wants an approved plan to develop a local economy based on sustainable tourism implemented. But opposition has been fierce. Franco Barattini says the economy here is marble. Look around, he says, there's nothing else. But Tetti and others say they'll keep fighting what they call destructive extraction.
We made the marble for Michelangelo for some of the most beautiful statues in the world, and we don't want to end up in this way.
But instead, he says, with a park and economy for future generations. Megan Williams, CBC News, Carrara.
The next U.S. president will be elected in about 10 months. After the break, we break down the top 4 factors to watch for as the campaigns unfold south of the border.
So that was my favorite meme of the year. She is laughing nervously and kind of saying like, yeah, like, oh, I guess this happened. I guess I relate to it, maybe. I laugh nervously and promise things, maybe. And I just think it works for everything. It's so funny.
This is my meal. I call this girl dinner.
Girl dinner. A TikToker just released a picture of like some cheese and some crackers and some grapes and pickles and called it girl dinner. And suddenly, everybody in the world started sharing, I've been eating girl dinner for years, that you don't have to go home and make some big, fancy meat and potatoes dinner. In fact, I'm not even that hungry. I think it just freed up a lot of people who are already doing this, but didn't know it was okay because we're all so judgy of our own selves and lives. So girl dinner is my favorite meme of 2023.
I'm proud of you. You made a lot of progress. I know it hasn't been easy. Doing more than you realize.
That was Anthony Vincent Official. He's singing, as you could hear, some pretty intense metal. But the lyrics are really uplifting and nice. It says, I'm proud of you. You've made a lot of progress. I know it hasn't been easy, but you're doing more than you realize. I'm proud of you.
So my favorite meme was actually sort of a thematic compilation of multiple memes, all of them focused on the rising up of orcas, primarily starting with them taking down luxury yachts. And I feel like, we're all the orcas some days. And there's a lot going on in the world that some of us would like to rise up and rebel against. So for me, sort of the triumphant evolution of orca hate against capitalism felt righteous and groovy.
My favorite meme of the year is kind of obscure, but I'm a dog owner and love to make fun of the fact that me and many dog owners take pictures of our dogs doing silly things and looking at them constantly. And so this meme was a guy who discovered his dog sleeping on a pillow, took a picture, and then becomes addicted to looking at the picture over and over and over all day and crying or smiling, which is basically how it is.
So this one is an Instagram reel. It's a person showing their dogs in various crocheted hats that they have made for them, and it's quite there's a lot there. I'm just looking at them now. There's radishes, rainbow, a Mardi Gras palm hat, cranberries, a chick, oranges. It just goes on and on and on. And what I love about this meme is just the fact that this person has managed to make so many hats for their dogs. And when I come home and it's late and I'm tired, I just want to see a dog in a crocheted hat.
Meteorologist Russ LeCate joins us now. Russ, you promised you would tell us when we could expect some snow on those mountains.
I promise, yes. Let's get right into that, Michelle, shall we? Because there isn't much up there to speak of yet, but we look at our Eastern Pacific satellite analysis here to give you an idea again of that split flow happening in the jet stream. And the more that develops, it just pulls the entire storm path sort of farther offshore. California coastline, Oregon coastline becomes sort of the main recipient, I suppose, of the storm fronts in a few days ahead. We're seeing the earliest arrival of a little Arctic air over the northeast corner of the province. I had a check today at what our maximum temperatures were province-wide. That was the high in Fort Nelson today, Fort St. John -9. For reference sake, this is Tuesday. By this weekend, the high in Fort Nelson will be 25 below, the high in Fort St. John 25 below, and right through the central interior into the Caribou, our daytime highs will be about -10, -12. We start to see that Arctic air working its way closer towards us. It's not here yet. It's a little ways off. In fact, your forecast for tomorrow, for day one, doesn't look too different than what we had today. A little more light rain into Victoria. It's more rain than snow in Worcester with that snow line at around 1,200 meters, give or take. So top half of the mountain sees a bit of snow, but it's still a little bit too mild. Here's the graphic that'll give you a much better idea of when the snow is coming to the mountains. Again, taking a look at what is going on for tomorrow, rolling it ahead to Thursday, when I think our freezing level is still pretty close to 1,200 meters. So the green here in Metro Vancouver and all the areas around the Fraser Valley, it's still rain here on Thursday. The mountain peaks only get snow. By Friday, the next system begins to drag some colder air with it. I see that freezing level coming below 1,000 meters. Most of the slopes on Grouse, Cypress, Seymour, and certainly Worcester Blackcomb will start to accumulate some snow Friday and Friday night. For the weekend, it trends colder, and that's province-wide as things dry out, with a freezing level down near sea level and the next system approaching the coast. Well, what does that mean around here? This graphic might be overplayed a little bit, but yes, a really good probability for some lowland snow, even around parts of Metro Vancouver, early next week. So things are changing over the following few days. Here we go again with a lot of cloud tomorrow, but just a little light rain. Thursday's wetter. Friday is wet and cold and not very pleasant, but at least the snow starts to add up on the mountains. And the longer range picture, well, we'll see just how low that snow line comes. Early next week, it'll get interesting.
Lots of skiers and snowboarders will be watching that forecast.
Yeah, fingers crossed, you bet.
Thanks. In about 10 months from now, voters in the U.S. will elect or potentially re-elect the country's next president. The run-up to that day could be chaotic and certainly complicated, and there is one main question dominating the race so far. Could it really be round two of Biden versus Trump? Paul Hunter takes a look at 4 factors to consider in the months to come.
Ever get the feeling that anytime a reporter stands right here to talk about Americans going to the polls, they always say something like, it's expected to be one of the most consequential elections of a generation. And they've been saying that a lot lately. So forgive me, because the 2024 presidential election is expected to be one of the most consequential of a generation. For real. Donald Trump has already said, if elected, he'll seek vengeance on those he sees as his enemies. Think about that. So, what to watch for in the weeks and months ahead? How about 4 things? Number 1, as ever, the economy. You know, when you think about it, Joe Biden's had a pretty decent first term on that front. It's created jobs, built bridges, fixed roads, boosted clean energy, and more. He calls it Bidenomics. And you'd think it's the stuff of a slam dunk re-election campaign. But is it? According to a recent poll, more than half the country thinks Biden is failing on the economy. Why? In part, inflation. Yes, it's down since last year, but every voter in the country still feels the pinch because prices are up. Groceries cost more than they used to, and a lot of big-ticket things like cars and healthcare, for example, not to mention mortgage rates. Fact is, voters almost always tend to blame whoever's in charge on such stuff, and in this case, that's Joe Biden. Every month, the U.S. releases the latest data on the inflation rate. If that doesn't keep dropping, and if prices don't follow, that's bad news for Joe Biden. Number 2, age and enthusiasm.
I expect so, but look, he is running, and I have to run.
Look, there's no denying it. Joe Biden is old. At 81, he's the oldest U.S. president ever.
Here he is 3 years ago.
I've always believed we can define America in one word: possibilities.
Here he is now.
Now, we need to evolve our institutions and drive creative new partnerships.
Voters have noticed. Another poll says 3/4 of Americans think he's too old to be president. And even though Donald Trump is almost as old, it somehow seems less of an issue with him.
Biden's not too old. That's not his problem. He's too incompetent.
So watch what that means for voter enthusiasm when it comes to Joe Biden. Does he excite people? Does he motivate them to get out and vote? Or is he relying on people getting out to vote against Donald Trump? That's risky. So keep an eye on the first primary that really matters to Joe Biden, South Carolina, next month.
Thank you, South Carolina.
It's the state where Biden's campaign took off in 2020, and it's the place he's counting on to kickstart 2024. A tepid South Carolina would be a worrying signal for Joe Biden. Number 3, Nikki Haley. Yes, Donald Trump is still far and away the front runner for the Republicans, but if there's one Republican who some think might have a chance to turn him back, it's the former governor of South Carolina.
We just have one more fellow we got to catch up to.
The big test for Nikki Haley is the primary in her home state late next month. If she somehow beats him there, who knows?
So how do I win, right? That's the question.
But if Trump wins big in her home state, or maybe if he even comes close, goes the thinking, she's done, Trump's in. So watch that one carefully.
They've been talking about the Haley surge. So she goes up 2 points, I go up, I think 10 points.
Number 4, Donald Trump. His legal troubles are well known. He's got multiple court dates coming up, but watch for one in particular, March 4th. That's the first day of his federal criminal trial here in Washington for trying to overturn the 2020 election.
It happens to also be the day before the biggest day of the primary season, Super Tuesday.
So if, let's say, Trump begins a big criminal trial on a Monday, and if on the very next day he still wins millions of votes in multiple states, well, then all bets are off on everything the rest of the way to Election Day, November 7th. To be clear, there are a lot of ifs in all of this. But here's one certainty. As Joe Biden readies for whoever his opponent will be, the time before the election is now short. These next few months will go by quickly. So there you have it. 4 things to watch for in U.S. politics this year. Easy, huh? So straightforward. If only.
We know it's hard to keep New Year's resolutions, so why not hear from those who have accomplished great things? After the break, a monk and an astronaut tell us how they did it.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
On face value, you might think space exploration and spirituality couldn't be more different, but ultimately both explore the biggest question of all, the meaning of life. Early Edition host Stephen Quinn met with two people fascinated with the topic, a retired astronaut and a monk, to talk about what drives them and what they're bringing along in 2024.
You were quite young when you had this ambitious goal to become an astronaut. A lot of kids think they're going to do that, but then you eventually broke the Canadian record for most consecutive days spent in space, which I believe was 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months for a long duration flight. I had another short duration flight, so I spent a total of 205 days in space.
Oh my gosh. And so what have you learned about the discipline from, your trajectory of wanting to be an astronaut as a child to actually, breaking a record for spending the most time in space?
If you're going to pursue a dream, a career dream or a personal dream or a New Year's resolution, sacrifices need to be made. To pursue my career, I needed to get extensive education. And that delayed, some personal aspects of my life, getting married, starting a household, buying a house, things like that. And then even after I became an astronaut, the training is very thorough. It's very intensive. So there's a lot of travel and other personal things that need to be sacrificed in order to complete all the training. So I guess what I'd like your listeners to know is that, you have to be disciplined if you're going to pursue a resolution and any other dream in life. So we need to strategize. If you're going to pursue a particular career or a New Year's resolution to learn another language or read more or get to the gym more, then you're going to have to sacrifice something else. Our lives are already busy with other things. So to add in a new element, something else has to go.
Now, Brother Maximus, self-discipline must also be very familiar to you. I mean, you've been at the monastery for 16 years. You pray 5 times a day. You're responsible for taking care of the grounds along with the other brothers. How do you stay on track with all of that?
Well, the life itself kind of carries you along, and also the brothers carry you along, When I wouldn't say we're actually that remarkable for our self-discipline. I know that's a little bit of an image maybe that monks have. I think we're maybe remarkable for falling a lot and then getting up again frequently. So I would say that definitely the structure of the life helps carry you along, but also your brothers who are just as weak as you are and can help pick you up when you fall.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem as well as our free app and YouTube. I will have your next local news at 11 o'clock right here after the National. Good night.